I'm at the mercy of electronics. There's 600 or 700 people. I've watched it. I'm going to just take us quickly to lunch. We've got some decisions to make about after lunch. The Al-Anons want to get together with Bo, and I think that's a great idea. We may need to take a break. We're about to start getting technical, which is why some of you came. Hang on. You're going to hate it when we're through. So I had come to believe that there was a power because I could see it. Little stuff. This was a maximum security single-cell penitentiary, which meant if I wasn't working or engaged in some regular activity, I was on lockdown. And while Bruce wouldn't let us talk at the school, he'd come by in the evenings and visit. And one of those evenings as he was visiting, it hit me, he's getting out of his cell when he wants to. I want what he has. Okay. He's just carrying the message. And eventually that came to pass. But there were two things going on, and I hope folks don't get locked in on just the big book. The big book activity we were doing was one of the important activities. But of more importance was the one-to-one that occurred outside of that meeting, on those visits and in the yard. And as we made real what it says here, I was encouraged to bring my own memories to it and to make this an experience, not an intellectual thing. I was not afraid of the penitentiary. This is number 3. I know how to live there. In fact, for people like me, that's rest camp. You learn who to play with and who not to play with, and you do your time, and it's over, and then you go back. I was terrified of going back. See, I don't know how to live. And I know that sometime in the next 1.5 to 7 years, they're going to put me back on the streets, and I don't know how to live. And I can't stand living the way I've been living. I can't do it anymore. So I'm looking for a way to live, and this is a way to live. It's a spiritual way to live in the human condition. And nothing less than that will do for people like me. So we had this, and I was also afraid that I was going to have to spend the rest of my life on a psychiatrist's couch because they had me certified on paper as a sociopath type 2. I'm not sure what that is. I know it's not good. And a manic depressive drug addict. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to... I've been trying for 34 years to sort this thing out. And I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life with that. Well, my sponsor, Bruce, was very direct and very loving. He said, we've decided we don't think you're a manic depressive, drug addict, sociopath, psychopath. We think you're a good actor. Oh, got me. There are real manic depressives. My son is one. When he's on taking his lithium, he's fine. And when he doesn't, his body kicks up and his mind goes wild. For me, though, it was a ploy. Manic depressive is a ploy. It's busy in here, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and you want to visit. And I need to find a way to back you off a little bit. Well, mood swings will do that. I became a surprise. They're supposed to come in boxes with ribbons on them. I became one. When I showed up, you didn't know for sure who was there. I didn't either. But I could do this. The graduate course of that is called Victim. And I could do that pretty well, too. If I can't get you to back off with a mood swing, I'll throw a victim at you. And you won't know what the hell to do with me, so you'll go away. And that's another game I played. So I'm a good actor. And when we got into the big book and Bill uses that actor image, it just, there I am. That's me. He said, we also don't believe that even the truth's going to work for you. Oh my. And he told me why. He said, you take the truth into your head and your ego catches it and says something like, I can use that later. And because I'm into building scripts and responses. So, and then when I use it, it's not truth anymore. And then I was helped to understand that everything that I had ever learned was a lie. Everything. And it wasn't that people were lying to me, but it wasn't my experience. I was a thief. A spiritual thief, a mental thief, an emotional thief. So it was all a lie. So he says, what we suggest for you is that you forget everything you think you know about anything. Because if any of it worked, you wouldn't be here. And I balked a little bit. I said, come on, I've learned some truth. He says, it's doubtful, but it is possible. I'll grant that. But I'll tell you what, if you know any truth at all, it'll still be the truth when we're through. And the rest of it is all garbage anyway, so just lay it all down. And that's consistent with what this talks about. As we go through the book, Bill tells us one of our problems is fixed ideas, fixed in place. Let them all go. Well, what the hell do I have to lose? I'm nobody anyway. I'm 38, 984. And I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So whatever, by some form of grace, I was able to come to let it go. And that's practically, that means I'm fully aware if I'm willing to argue with you about something, it's my opinion. I never have to defend the truth. So I'm willing to let that go. So it has a practical implication. I don't have to fight with you. Whatever you believe is true, wherever you live. And I'm willing to listen to most of it. You fascinate me. Forget everything you think you know about anything. I knew and accepted fully that this would be spiritual. And that scared the hell out of me. There were two things going on, even though I was already spiritually awake consciously in my mind. I had tried church, and I ran into a problem when I was about 9 or 10. I got my white Bible for attendance because I loved Sunday school. Because in Sunday school, Jesus loved me. And then I went upstairs. They got a different Jesus up there. Or at least that's what it sounded like to me. And I got confused and did what I do best. I just quit. Okay. I am, by nature, lazy. That's my big problem. I am emotionally, mentally, and spiritually and physically lazy. It's much easier for me to hear what you have to say and then steal that and pass it on to her as long as you're not around. Because it sounds good. And I think in today's AA we are walking a dangerous path because quite often we are teaching people our lingo before we teach them.
Okay, we are being recorded.
And so they're feeling like they're going to jump out of a 32nd story window, but they're fine and they can sound good. And so one-to-one is very important because on a daily basis I can't get away with that. Good sponsorship is more about asking questions than giving answers. I want to get from you where you're at because we're going to be doing this activity and I want to make sure you're there. And the big book gives me all kinds of checklists as to where we're at so we can move forward, and if we're not there, then we need to review something. Anyway, I wanted what they had so badly that without following any directions, I went back to my cell one time and said the third step prayer and had a terrible experience. At that time, I really believed if I said that prayer with earnestness, and it was everything I had in me, that there would be
okay, we are being recorded.
And my clothes would change from green to white, and my cell door would spring open, and the guard at the end of the tier would say, okay, Pritts, you can go home now, we don't need you anymore, or something equally as foolish. I said the third step prayer with everything in me, and absolutely nothing happened.
Okay,
nothing.
we are being recorded.
Terrified me, pissed me off. I can handle any crisis you want to come down with. They had a fire here. If it was going on now, we wouldn't break yet. That's easy stuff. Nothing happened, and that terrified me. and angered me. And I went back to Bruce because I had been taught if your sponsor tells you to do something and you do it, and you don't get the exact results you think you ought to get, go bitch at him. I did. I went back to Bruce with the alcoholic war cry coming out of my mouth. Where's mine? Bill had one. How come I don't get one? Where's mine? And that's a guide for my current life, by the way. Anytime I feel or hear me in any
we are
way
being
indicate,
recorded.
where's mine, I know I'm slipping off. I'm in the middle of it, always, because mine is always right here. Anyway, where's mine? And he says, well, dummy. And that was a step up. In the morning I was 38,984. Now I've got a name. And today there are two voices that come into my mind as spiritual prompts. When I'm getting a little off base, my mind will, because God uses whatever's at hand, I will hear Bruce say, well, dummy. And it'll slow me. And the other is my grandfather's voice. I have absolutely no bad memory ever concerning my grandfather. And when it's the boss himself wants to talk to me, I will hear my grandfather say, Don, and I'll get quiet instantly. See, it has to be understandable for me. The spiritual life is not esoteric. It's very practical. It has to have images I can use. So while I like to read the big book to you, I will also use other images that say the same thing. I was doing a big book thing in the Colorado State Reformatory one time. And Bill wrote in American Eastern Midwest, this kid in the back of the room said, I didn't understand a word of what you just read. He spoke a different language than Bill did, so I have to sometimes shift the images a little bit. Well, Bruce and I talked a little bit, and he destroyed all of my conceptions of God, or actually my concepts of God. The book does not use the word conception, or concept, it uses conception. A concept is already finished and boxed up and settled, and that's the way it is. A conception has plenty of room to go. But anyway, he asked me what I thought about God to describe him, and each time I said something, he'd destroy it. I was talking mostly about Santa Claus anyway. No, what's he going to do for me? The spiritual life isn't what he's going to do for me, it's what can I do for him. So we got all that done, and I was pissed again, and I screamed at him. You're asking me to turn my life and will over the care of nothing. He said, why not? Nothing can run it better than you've been doing it. Okay. We all have one final, last deep reservation. Mine was very similar to Jerry's. And Bruce knew this, and he had the courage of his convictions, and he loved me. Now, truth will set you free, but truth without love is cruelty. And confrontation without a real answer is brutality. So I don't participate in that. But he had a real answer, and he loved me. And he knew I had one final reservation, and he asked me to tell him what I was afraid of. Now, I've never been afraid of the unknown. I love the unknown. It's where all the action is. What I'm afraid of, I always have a reference point for, and I make up some disaster out of that. And my conception of God was that. If I had truly turned my will and life over to the care of God, he had work for me to do. I didn't want the job because I knew what it was. Just enough time to get through this. If I surrendered totally and gave my life to God, as you were asking me to do, he'd put me on the corner of Colfax and Broadway in Denver, handing out Watchtower magazines and asking strangers, have you been saved, brother? And I've got this fine apartment in cell B49 right in the Colorado State Penitentiary, and I can't see me doing that. Because I had a reference for that. When I was in high school, there was a fellow we called the Brown Man, standing on the corner of Colfax and Broadway, handing out watchtowers and asking strangers, have you been saved? He wore brown clothes and brown suit and shirt and tie and hat and shoes. Brown attitude. Lovely man, but brown attitude. Have you been saved, brother? And we used to drive by and make fun of him. And that was my hang-up. See, I'm not a big badass. My hang-ups are petty. They're so petty they make me ashamed sometimes. I didn't want you driving by making fun of me. I would rather die. So he said with a smile, that rascal, "Oh, well, let's talk about that." Now, for you new people, that does not mean let us talk about anything. It means be quiet for a minute. We'll see if we can get past the concrete you call your head. And he began to teach me the way to the human heart. It's through questions. He said, "Don, do you suppose that guy that's handing out watchtowers this afternoon had breakfast where he wanted to?" And I said, "Yeah, probably." He said, "Well, you didn't." Oh, my goodness. "Do you suppose that man that's standing down there humiliating himself by asking strangers if they've been saved is wearing the clothes that he picked out to do it in?" I said, "Yeah, probably." He said, "Well, you're not." Oh. "Do you suppose when he's all through making a fool of himself today that he gets to go home?" Nailed me because I didn't. And in doing that, he literally hand-carried me into my new mind and laid the foundation for my entire life. Anything at all that God has in mind for me is better than anything at all that I will ever have in mind for me, period. And I really do live like that. And I get willful from time to time. He doesn't mind that. I get cranky and childish and willful. But whatever he has in mind for me is better than what I have in mind for me. And one of the practical ways that I apply that, in the home I live in, because I go home now, I can find it even. My bathroom is larger than the cell I used to live in. And from time to time, I sit there and I ask myself this: could I spend the next 10 years in this room? I close the door, and then I design in my mind how I could do that. And once I've got it where I could be in just that bathroom for the next 10 years, I open the door to the rest of the house. Well, it's time we get serious here pretty quick. After lunch, the journey begins at that point. The rest of it is a lead-in. The first and second steps are vitally important. We're going to this afternoon sometime start getting into detail. I want to suggest to you that we're going to take the third step together, and we would like you to join us if you wish. But think about that. The suggestion is think well about that. Because if you do it alone, that's good. If you do it with other people, that's good. It can change your life. And we'll probably do that and then get into some detail on the fourth and fifth step. And, we'll go as much as we can. We want to talk about amends some, about how you live this way of life. I presume that's why you all came. We'll use this book for some references, and we'll use our experiences with the book for references. But I need to know, since it's time for lunch and the Al-Anons want to get together with the Baptist, I'm going to make a suggestion. Lunch is at noon. I'm going to suggest that the Al-Anons get together with the Baptist about 1 o'clock. And what do you want, an hour or two? We could use a break to visit with one another and do whatever we're going to do. So what I'm going to suggest is that you guys decide when you want to meet, and then around 2 or 2:30 we all come back here together. Does that suit everyone? Is that a long enough break? That's 2.5 hours. Okay? 2:30? Yeah, 2:30 makes sense to me. All right, we'll all gather here at 2:30. Y'all are on your own. Get your nap.
Resentment over here.
So Bruce, having led me into my new way of being, whatever God has in mind for me is better than anything I have in mind for me. I mulled that over for a day or two. I don't know how long, what he had said, and what I was feeling. Am I echoing a little bit? There we go. Thank you. It's weird to hear your own voice come back a fraction of a second later. You wonder who said that. I became willing to go to the corner of Colfax and Broadway and hand out Watchtower magazines if that's what he wanted. And I went back to Bruce and said that. And he laughed at me again. He said, "Oh, that's noble." I said, "But listen, God's already got a guy down there doing that. He probably has something else in mind for you." And my automatic response is always, "What?" And he says, "I don't know." And you'll never know. Just get out there on the line and do it. And the adventure began with that. And life is truly an adventure. Not always a pleasant adventure. There are lions and tigers along the path. But most of the time it's just a plain adventure. My kids are not only not afraid of me today, they love being with me because they were brought up with me telling them every time we headed into something that looked like a crisis, another adventure coming up. And they love it. So he probably has something else in mind for me. And I can't wait to find out what it is for today. Things don't change that much. The old way of thinking is, oh God, something's about to happen. And now it's, oh God, something's about to happen. Right? Let me be part of this thing. Huh? What's falling apart? I'm not giving it up. This one falls open where I need it. I don't have to look for it or memorize it. It's just there. Some things that are important if we've gotten this far. I'm going to get a little bit technical because I was asked to by some people. Not too technical, but what do I do now that I am truly willing to surrender? Because I don't know what that means. I've heard from the Baptists and the Baptists and the Catholics and the Jews and the Mormons, and I've heard them all, and everybody's got a little different view of what I'm supposed to do. And now I've awakened to the fact that I'm willing to do whatever God has in mind, and I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm willing. I have concluded in my life today that the most important, most observable, most recognizable sign of the presence of God is willingness. It's all power. Consider, the very instant that I become willing to change, I've already been changed. It's that powerful. And all through the big book, willingness is said to be the key. It's the essential ingredient. Because I don't do much except come willing. And that's all I brought to this deal was my willingness. And that's all I bring today is my willingness. Then I'm shown how. That applies with writing inventory. It applies to making amends. It applies to raising family. Jerry mentioned it. There's times I don't want to do this, but I'm willing. And the power comes. And I have a little prayer I'll give you for those days when I really don't want to do it. I say to God, I really don't want to do this today. Okay. So there we are. Yeah. But because of what you have done for me, I will go do this one for you. And somehow it changes the deal. Let me give you a viewpoint before we get too technical. I've been greatly interested in all spiritual activities since I became a spiritual person. I really want to be able to pray with anyone. I don't care what your ritual may be. I want to be in spiritual communion with you and with God as we both understand Him. I don't care. I'll go to a businessmen's fundamentalist prayer breakfast, or I'm a pipe carrier in the Lakota tradition. I don't care what it is. I'll go for it because I want to participate. So I've made a study of spiritual things and found something very interesting. They're almost all the same. There are certain ritualistic things that, for whatever reason, all people seem to come up with. Now let's take a look at it. Ceremony, whether it be religious ceremony, spiritual ceremony, church, whatever. Generally, someone sets fire to something, makes smoke. Whether it's incense or sage, or someone lights a fire to help symbolize and bring the five senses into the arena with us. Sometimes it smells good, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Somebody sets fire to something. Somebody else hits a gong or a bell, or someone makes a noise, which brings that in, helps the focus. And once we've got everyone's attention, we make a preliminary prayer. And to do that, we need an invocation. Someone invokes the name of God. Whatever their name for God is, the name God is offered, which says, I'm now ready for communication. Okay. If I want to communicate with Jerry, I say, Jerry, that isn't a demand for his attention. It's my notifying him I'm ready to communicate now if you're ready. So they all use the word God to invoke the consciousness of the presence of God. In today's world, sometimes we say, let's invite God in. That freaks me out. God's already here. I just need to acknowledge that. Then, most always, there is a prayer that states the purpose why we're here. What's this ceremony going to be about? Someone, either an individual or group, or a choir, but someone makes a statement of purpose. Then the ceremony starts, and we act out the statement of purpose. And when we're all through, someone makes another statement that tells us what we just did. It's like a writer. I'm a writer. You tell people what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. And that's how you do it. That's the formula. And then it closes with amen, amen, so be it. It closes with some sort of closing, and for us it's usually amen. So I look at our book, because if it's truly spiritual, those elements will be there, I'm going to presume. And sure enough, beginning at the third step, God. First word, the invocation is made. Then the statement of purpose. I offer myself to thee to do with me and build with me as thou wilt. Talks about the difficulties I'm going to have. It states what's going to go on here. And then the fourth and fifth step are the ritualistic acting out my participation in that prayer. And at the sixth step, I review the whole thing. And then at the seventh step, I say the third step prayer over again, only now it's got teeth in it. Okay? And then we say amen. There's no amen between God and the amen at the end of the seventh step. So my viewpoint in working with this is that this is one prayer that begins at the third step and ends at the seventh step. We just happen to put numbers on them. Which causes two things to happen. If you're about to enter into the house cleaning process, the active participation in getting rid of, then you're safe and protected. See, I was terrified of going into my mind. Last time I'd gone into my mind, I killed it. And now you want me to go back again. Well, God gave me an image a while back of that I think is poetic. This is from the Master, not from me. The first time that I looked into the darkness, I was looking from the darkness. Now, I can look into the darkness from the light. We come to the light before we get into the house cleaning, you know. You're spiritually awakened before you say the third step prayer, or why would you bother to say it? Who the hell are you talking to? Okay. Fred. We had one guy in our group, I think it was, he called him Bruce. And he quit one day. He says, I keep running into Bruces and they're all crazy. So whoever you want to show up. Anyway, this fits that. From the world's greatest religions to the most primitive spiritual ceremonies, it's the same thing. So I'm spiritually protected. I'm also now standing on the railroad track. And if you don't keep moving, the train will run right over you. And we are cautioned at this point, do not go here unless you mean to finish the trip. Okay. All the way through the early part of the big book, you can get off. Have you noticed that? You can get off anytime you want. Not after this one you can't, and it says so. We think well before taking this step. Making sure we were ready to abandon ourselves utterly. No more reservations. So it's pretty powerful stuff when I think about that. And the way I play that out when I sponsor people sounds cruel, but it isn't. My warden, I love old Blue, the warden. I had the opportunity to go to North Carolina a few years back and work for the Department of Corrections. You should have been in my head when they handed me the keys to the place. Okay. And the warden of the facility where my office was an AA member, and he was about a year sober. He'd been working with Tom. And called me down to his office one day and he said, would you sponsor me? And the devil got me. I said, oh, Waylon, of course I would. I've been waiting for years to get my hands on one of you guys. So she said, well, I better check with Tom. I said, I already have. He thinks it's a good idea. And we got up to this point, and he was ready. And this is customary. When they're ready and chomping at the bit, I send them home. We're not going to do it today. Says, you think well before taking this step. Go home and think well, and then call me tomorrow. We'll get together and do it together. And sure enough, he called me the next morning. He said, you know, you're right. I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I can surrender completely to God. I have a prison to run. And if I don't tell Pete to pull the stumps, they don't get pulled. If I don't stay on the cooks all the time, and blah, blah, blah. And we got to take a good close look at all the things that were distracting him and busy running this prison. And the upshot was we both concluded that God runs a pretty good universe. Maybe he can help you run this tiny little prison out here too. Yeah. And then we got to his real problem. He said, what I'm really afraid of is that I'll become a snowflake. I got a prison to run. I can't be a snowflake. He calls me now and he says, this snowflake talking, he talks like Bo does, only worse. They call him Old Blue. And I love Old Blue. So if you're ready to take the third step, I'm not. I want you to think about it. Then we can do it. And I've found over the years that is a very, very powerful result comes out of that. Taking inventory, the way I read the book Alcoholics Anonymous, is not to find out who I am. It's to help me discover who I'm not. So we can get rid of that, and then who I am will just show up. That's what it says. In other words, it says it's a strenuous attempt to face and to be rid of the things in myself which are blocking me from consciousness of the presence of God. I assume that because it said the most important fact of my life is consciousness of the presence of God. So what's standing in the way of me being aware of God, of the presence of God? And if it weren't for that, I couldn't have looked at some of the stuff I had to look at. I'll tell you one of the incidents that caused me great pain about my children and the way I had put them on top of that marijuana so I could get it through and scared them and all that. So they weren't in any physical danger. Had we been caught, they'd have been better off than they were with me. They'd have gone to a foster home and eventually back to my parents. But what I did to them emotionally has crippled them. Trust got broken that day. And it can never, ever, as far as I know, still hasn't been completely restored. We get along okay, but there's a piece missing. Okay. That and numerous other things. How can I live with them? Well, the promise is that if I will face them, we can get rid of them. And that's why I came here, was to be changed so profoundly that I could never do that again. Anything less than that is not good enough for me. It isn't that I want to have a better attitude. I need to be a new person. And Dr. Silkworth says without an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of recovery. That means a whole new mind. And I've got one today. I still carry my old alcoholic mind with me. I just don't use it for me. It's of no use to me whatsoever. But I can drag it out and it'll be of use to you. If I drag my alcoholic mind out, you start saying, oh, yeah, it sounds like me. And then we can move on with it. There are times, however, because it's such an amusing mind, that if there's nothing good on television, I just let them strap me in a chair and let it go. Make sure you're strapped down tight, though. And once in a while, it flexes its muscle. And it's a funny little old thing. It's all about me, right mine. Okay. So I'm going to face and be rid of the things in myself that are blocking me. Difficult thing to do, to get rid of the things. This is what I've been surviving on. My character defects are essentially my defenses against what I think is a hostile world. And even though they cause me difficulty, they're mine. Okay? They work. For a while. They finally stopped working. One of the things that helped me along the way is that I was reminded that I signed up for hospital and got prison. I can't even get locked up in the right place. Okay, so I have such a loving sponsor because he was completely right on the money here. I said to him one day, Bruce, I feel so guilty. He said, well, you should. Look what you've done. Oh, okay, that takes care of the victim. Bruce, I'm terrified of my own mind. You have good reason to be, he said. Oh, yeah. Now I got excited, and my first inventory was a lie. And I learned more from it than I have from any other inventory I've ever done. I didn't follow any directions. We hadn't gotten into the school yet. I'm hot to trot. Did you ever do that? At 5, I knew I could drive the car. Just give me the keys. So I went back to my cell, and I spent 2 hours writing down some of the worst things I'd ever done. I thought that's what inventory was. Because there were people hanging out in the AA group that said that's what it is, life story. And I went back to Bruce, who up to now had been, he gave me his time and his wisdom and his energy. When I took this to him, he looked at it, he said, that's garbage. You wrote that to impress me. Get away from me. And he meant it. Just get away from me. This is garbage. I'm alcoholic and somewhat self-willed. I found somebody who would listen to it, by God. I'd spent 2 hours, and somebody's going to hear this. Hey, that's the longest I'd ever spent being really honest. So I went to old Leroy, because I knew Leroy. I knew Leroy would have to listen to it because he was tied up with the prestige of being an AA member. And he couldn't turn me down. Okay? Leroy was Leroy. And I'd tell him one of these things, and Leroy would say, well, that wasn't that bad. Because in the criminal world, I'm kind of lightweight, really. And I'd tell him something else, oh, that wasn't that bad. And pretty soon I woke up to something, because some of it really was that bad. I was never a violent man. Only twice did I try to kill anybody. Well, for a nice guy like me, that isn't too bad. What I recognized was that I was in grave jeopardy at the moment. And this is why I think the Spirit works when I can't. I knew that I had once again picked someone who would tell me what I wanted to hear, so I didn't have to do anything about changing it. And I knew if I didn't stop that instantly, that I was going to die a very ugly death. And I'm not afraid of death. I've done that 3 times. It's nothing. But to die an ugly death means that for some period of time just before that, I'm going to have to live an ugly life. And I can't stand the thought of that ever again, never. So I knew I had to do something, and it had to be immediate. And that's another word I find in here frequently. From this point on, we can dawdle up to here. From this point on, everything is immediate. At once, it says, immediately. It's the 10th step. You don't wait till tomorrow. You get it done now. It's all immediate. There's no delays here. The world of the Spirit is right here, right now. It's the only time it can happen, so don't delay. So I went back, and I did what this book said. And I got to tell you, my second little inventory, my first real inventory was a shabby little effort. There wasn't enough of my mind left to even remember some of this stuff. I made some discoveries in reading what this says in here. It says that resentment is a spiritual disease, not an emotional and mental problem. I'm not making that up. That's why I got this thing out. I know you know all this already. It says on page 64, it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. It must be the granddaddy of them. Okay? It's a spiritual disease. So we've not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. And there it is. I suffer from a spiritual illness. Now, why would that be? Earlier on in here, Bill suggests to us that we set aside prejudice we have toward spiritual terms and ask ourselves what they mean to us. And that's one of the things I still use in my daily life. What does that mean to me? See, I know what it means to you. I hear you say it at meetings. What does that mean to me? If resentment is a spiritual disease, then resentment is a spiritual term. What does that mean? Why would that be a spiritual disease? What does it do? Well, first of all, it separates me from you. And anything that separates me from the children of God separates me from God. And I can't work on this God thing, so in His mercy, He lets me work on the one thing I can. You and I, the children of God. So anything that separates me from you is going to separate me from God, and resentment is one of them. How does that play? Well, later on it also gives me, if I resent you, you own me. Oh yeah. We see the world and its people really dominate us. If I resent you, you can be dead or in another town and you're still running my life because you're what's on it. I'm going through one scene after another. I'm usually pissed at you because you interfered with something I wanted to do, and so I lost. And I'm replaying it so that I win. Now, if I'd have just said, and he'd have said, then I'd have said, got him, bang. That's a good one. Let's try another one. And pretty soon I start making allies. I'd have said, now Jerry understands, I got Jerry pissed at you too, and you don't even know him. Okay? But I know how to work him, and now there's 2 of us. I'd have said, Gerald, get him, bam, got him again. Good, that works. What a waste of time, but that's how my mind works. Got to get rid of that stuff. Two of them that I'll put on here, because I've already told you the one story, was the federal agent that came to my house on my boy's birthday in 1966. Well, there were three of them, big fellows. One came through the front door, and one came through the back door, and one came through the side window, yelling and screaming and waving their guns, and knocked me down, stepped on my neck, and called me really ugly names. You remember that? I've been around the world several times. I never heard names like what I was that day. Scared the hell out of everybody, including my kids, and my young 4-year-old let out a shriek, and this cop swung around with his gun and almost shot him. Just an automatic reflex. See, people who do what I do usually shoot back, so they come prepared. Believe me, he was on my list. I nursed my hate for him all the way through the federal penitentiary, all the way back out. I found out where he lived. I was going to get him. I can't even. This guy who used to live here was really dumb. Anyway, he made my list. And the result that I came out with by using this process set me free. I still don't like what he did, and it talks about that. I don't have to like it. But I brought him there with a hand-engraved invitation. I became his job. Since I quit smuggling dope, there hasn't been a federal narcotics agent in my house. It's amazing. Okay. And if I ever do encounter him, I owe him amends. I owe him two things. I owe him an apology for putting him in a position where he almost shot a 4-year-old. Shame on me. And I owe him thanks for not shooting my son. The key word is almost. This is a highly trained professional. I don't have to like what he did, but because he was so good at his job, my boy's still alive. I could not face that unless I believed in the promise here that I can get rid of that. I can become a kind of person who does not bring that kind of jeopardy to the home. There's only been one other federal agent in my house in 35 years. I'm on a lot of nonprofit boards, and we forgot to do our IRS form the correct way. And this federal tax agent came by one day to explain to me what I had to do. And the more he talked, the dumber I got. He finally said, "Oh, just sign it. I'll fill it out." So learn another thing. It isn't about being smart. Survival is about being... Then the other fellow that had to go on the inventory was Albert, the guy who hired me to do the job. He also turned us all in. Well, he made the list. He got busted on some penny ante thing, and they scared him, and he rolled 5 of us over. The truth of it was, and it came out in my inventory, is that I knew he would do that. That's the kind of person he was. I can't blame Albert for behaving according to his natural way of being. It kind of says that in here. We realized that the people who harmed us were perhaps spiritually sick. Albert was weak. And one of the ways that helped me identify my alcoholism came through that. When I came out of Texas, I was sent to the federal prison in Latuna, Texas. The deal we finally worked out with the government was that we got a 4-year sentence for conspiracy, and they broke it up into 6 months in the penitentiary and 5 years probation, or parole. Now, my son's birthday is December 12th, the little one. During that 6 months, I got back into my right mind. I detoxed. I was sane again. And the most important thing in my life was to get home for that kid's birthday. They were going to release me December 15th, and his birthday is December 12th. And so I became a lawyer. I went to the law library and began reading law and began throwing writs. I'm not stupid. It says, do this way, and we'll do this way. And I got out December 10th. Got on the bus for Denver. But I needed to stop and see Albert, not to kill him. I knew even then. We told the guys, just leave him alone. But I didn't want him on my back trail. I needed to see him and let him know, I'm not looking for you, Albert. Because I don't want that kind of snake crawling up the trail behind me. And of course we had a drink and smoked a joint, and I got home December 15th. It gets really, really clear if you just open your mind. Okay. So Albert was on there, and I owe Albert something too. I'm to stay away from Albert forever. That's what I owe him. I am not to be a problem for Albert ever. And somehow I knew that at the beginning, and it got reaffirmed here. I got to stay away from all of the Alberts of the world. My troubles are truly of my own making. And I'm not stupid. I know who is and who isn't. We all do. I know the difference between right and wrong. What used to plague me is that I knew the difference between right and wrong. Okay. I can't kid myself about that anymore. I just don't have the strength to do the right thing, or the strength to not do the wrong thing. So I let the Spirit guide me there. But I know. I don't have any blonde jokes. One of the simplest of all the logic functions is if this group of things is not right, then the opposite will be right. Okay? So if I'm spiritually sick because I'm separated from you, then my activities should bring me closer to you, not separate me from you. And the principles I will look for then were those that help me become, I'm you and you're me. And it will help me make that contact. And it's that simple. With that in my mind as a way of thinking, then I can see the principles that will produce that and the ones that won't. And we go on into what those are. The only time I ever get upset is when somebody either threatens, interferes with, or hurts me. It's the only reason to get upset. If you're not threatening me or hurting me or interfering with my personal desires, you're cool. I don't have a problem with you. So I'm to look for the things that threaten me. And what are those? Well, self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition. That's a big one. I'm a really poor example of the American way because I have very little ambition. Don't care if I ever get rich. I married a rich woman. She cares. It's much easier. Okay. Prestige is a pain in the butt. I've had it. And you have to just keep having it. You have to do prestigious things all the damn time. I've had a little fame. That's a real pain in the butt. You have to be famous all the damn time. So the opposite of that would be anonymous. And that doesn't mean secret. A life-changing thing about the time I needed it. I talk about Chuck Chamberlain a lot because I identified so much with Chuck. My whole attitude about Chuck was if I'd have been there first, that's exactly how I would have said it too. Okay, we're just talking about the same experience. Okay, and he said a profound thing in Midland, Texas, in the early 70s. I don't know how many caught it, but I did. If God had made any two of us the same, one of us would have been unnecessary. That means that I have a contribution to make to life, and I am the only one that can make it. If I don't make it, it will never be made. And you have a contribution to make to life. And if you don't make it, it'll never be made, because I can't make yours and you can't make mine. There has never been, to my knowledge, another model just like this one on this planet. Even out of the same gene pool, my brother and sister are different than I am. Okay? I'm the only one like me that's ever going to be. What an incredible thing. So my job partly is to make sure that you get to make your contribution, because it takes all of us to make up that what's called the Christ spirit. We all have to make the contribution. I can't be complete until you are. Don't know if that makes any sense, but it can't. I'm whole, but I won't be complete till you are. So it becomes enlightened self-interest for me to help you be all you can be, and in doing so, I become all I can be. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. I will not interfere with you, and you can't interfere with me. People sometimes who are late, because I have a thing about being on time that we'll talk about later, apologize to me for wasting my time. You can't waste my time. I'm the only one who can waste my time. If you're not there, I'm doing something else. So how can you waste my time? When you show up, I quit doing that and we start doing what we're going to do together. But when I have an appointment with you, let's take the people I work with. Jerry knows this. 6 o'clock is our appointed time. We live in a city, so there has to be some leeway. So you got 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after is the leeway. In my world, because I've tested it. I can get from one part of town to the other within 20 minutes. So don't give me no shit. Okay. At 10 minutes till, I sit in my chair and begin a meditation to prepare myself for you. I want to really be prepared for you so you get the best that there is, meaning get me out of the way. And I'll stay that way until 10 minutes after. And 11 minutes after, I begin whatever's next. And it's too late for us to get together. And if you get there 10 minutes too soon, I'm not ready for you yet. Very important activity. That's just the way I do it. I'm not saying you have to do it that way. But it's very rude to be late. Very rude. Call me. Tell me you're not going to make it. I really don't care. I have enough things to do. If you don't show up, I'll do something else anyway. If you do show up, I want to be all yours for that period of time. Because unless I become all the way with you, you will not become all the way with me. And I really need to know who you are and what you're doing. And anyway, I got off the track there a little bit. I want to let these guys go ahead a little bit. The first 3 columns of the resentment inventory, and there are 3 inventories I hope we go over with you, 3 completely different formats. This resentment inventory is done in 4 columns, but I will tell you now and explain later, the most important thing in the inventory is not the writing. It's the attitude changes that take place between the writings. And I do have a lot to say about that, and I've used up kind of my time, so I'm going to leave it at that, and then we'll go from there, so you can see how I use the big book. Because if you don't get out of the big book once in a while, it says a business that takes no regular inventory will soon go broke. Well, a business that stays in inventory all the time is also going to go broke. You got to be open for business every now and then. Okay, so we'll get back to that.